Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyanyajantar Gatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivod Bhutan Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanameva Dvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshinamurtaye नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते। I welcome you all to the 54th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. Aparoksha Jnanavan Jivanmuktaः. When a student asked, who is a Jivanmuktaः, who is liberated even when living? Then Tattvabodha says, Aparoksha Jnanavan Jivanmuktaः. The one who has this Aparoksha Jnanam, such a Jnani is a Jivanmuktaः. So what is this Aparoksha Jnanam? It is the knowledge that I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. So what kind of Brahman? As we discussed, the same Brahman that was present before the manifestation of this world, from which this entire world has emerged, by which this entire world is sustained, and into which this entire world resolves. That Brahman, which was there at the very beginning of Srishti, when nothing was manifest, that same Brahman, that same attributeless, changeless consciousness, I am. And how does this knowledge liberate? How does knowing I am Brahman liberate me? Because Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman is Satyam, and everything else that manifests depending on Brahman for its existence is Mithya. So Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya and Aham Brahmasmi, it boils down to Aham Satyam Jagan Mithya or Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyati. Therefore, I am this Satyam, Brahma, and everything else happens to be Mithya. So I, the Satyam Brahma, belong to a higher order of reality, and everything else is in a lower order of reality. And this knowledge itself is moksha, because I am unaffected as Satyam. I am unaffected from anything else that is Mithya. Mithya can never affect Satyam because Mithya itself depends upon Satyam for its existence. And it is not that I have to become this Satyam. I have to recognize that I myself am this Satyam Brahma. So this is the Aparoksha Jnanam. Aparoksha Jnanavan Jivanmuktaः. And how does this Aparoksha Jnanam arise? Vedanta Vakyaihi Sadguru Upadeshena cha. Through the consistent and systematic study of Vedanta under a qualified teacher. Then we discussed who gains this Aparoksha Jnanam. Is it Atma that gains this Aparoksha Jnanam, or is it Anatma that gains this Aparoksha Jnanam? We said that Atma cannot gain any Jnana because Atma is nirvikaraha, Atma is changeless. And Atma need not gain this Jnanam also because Atma is ever liberated. So Atma doesn't have samsara. Then does Anatma gain this Jnanam? We say Anatma is Jadam. So Anatma by itself has not even an iota of consciousness. So Anatma by itself also cannot gain this Jnanam. Anatma by itself is not even alive. So who is it that gains this Jnanam? We say that it's the mixture of Atma and Anatma. That is what we call the Jiva. The Jiva is a mixture of Atma and Anatma, and it is this mixture that gains this Aparoksha Jnanam. The reflected consciousness, backed by the reflecting media of this body and mind, when it's pervaded by the original consciousness, then this triplet that comes together, that is what we call the Jiva. So it is the reflected consciousness backed by the reflecting media, pervaded by the original consciousness that gains this jnana. Then what is the form of this jnana? What happens when the jnanam takes place? Is it that I have some experience of pure consciousness? Is that what it is? We say that consciousness, Atma, by itself is not opposed to ignorance. Why? Because they belong to different orders of reality. As you see, this order of reality discussion keeps coming up in Vedanta in different contexts. That's the understanding of Satyam and Mithya is absolutely central to the vision of Vedanta. That's why it's coming back again and again in different contexts. So Atma is Satyam, ignorance is Mithya. They belong to different orders of reality. And what we say is that if there has to be a destroyer-destroyed relationship, it can be only between two things that are in the same order of reality. If I am in a dream and I'm thirsty, then the real water by the bedside is of no use in quenching the dream thirst. If I'm injured in the dream, if I have a dream wound, then the real ointment by the bedside is of no use in healing my dream wound. If there's a dream monster, then the real sword by the bedside is of no use in beheading the dream monster. I need a dream sword. I need dream water to quench the dream thirst. I need a dream ointment to heal the dream wound. I need a dream sword to behead the dream monster. Similarly, ignorance is in a lower order of reality. And therefore, to destroy this ignorance, I need something in the lower order of reality, in the same order of reality as the ignorance. Then what is this? We talked about consciousness, we talked about ignorance, and we are saying consciousness is in the higher order of reality. So, what is it that destroys ignorance? We say that a vritti has to arise in the mind. A vritti means a thought. A thought which is in the same lower order of reality as this ignorance. And what is this vritti? It is the vritti that aham brahmasmi, that I am Brahman. This thought has to arise in the mind. Sadguru Padeshena cha Vedanta Vakyaihi. How does this vritti arise? This vritti arises due to the Mithya Upadesha of the Mithya Vedanta Shastram by the Mithya Guru. In the Mithya mind, this Mithya Vritti, Aham Brahmasmi Vritti arises that destroys this Mithya ignorance. So this is how the Aparoksha Jnanam has to take place. So then, what kind of Aparoksha Jnanam is it? He says, Dridha Nishchaya Rupa Aparoksha Jnanavan Jivanmuktaഃ. So it has to be in the form of a firm conviction that I am Brahman. How firm is it? So he gives an example. Yatha dehoham purushoham brahmanoham shutroham iti dridha nishchayah. Just like an Agami has got this firm conviction that I am male, I am a Brahmana, I am a Shudra, etc. Why? Because he doesn't know of any other I. The only I he knows of is this reflected consciousness in the reflecting media of this body and mind. He only knows the sentiency in the body and the mind. He doesn't know the original consciousness. He doesn't know that the nature of the reflected consciousness is really the original consciousness. Therefore, he mixes up the attributes of the reflecting media with the reflected consciousness and says, I am the body, I am the mind, I am male, I am tall, I am dark, etc. But he is very convinced about it. If you go and try to talk to him something in Vedanta, he will dismiss, saying that I am totally convinced that this is what it is. I don't need whatever you're talking about. So Drisha Nishchaya Rupa, Jnanavan, even the Ajnani is. It happens to be Dridha Nishchaya Rupa Ajnanam, that's a different matter. But there is Dridha Nishchaya. Exactly like he is convinced. This Ajnani is convinced, this Jnani Jivanmukta is also convinced. Convinced about what? Naham Brahmanaha na Shutraha na Purushaha. I am not this. I am not this body. I am not a male. I am not a Brahmana. I am not a Shudra. He has got this firm conviction. Then what am I? I am Brahman. And what kind of Brahman? Asangaha. Kintu asangaha. He said that this asangaha, shabdaha, is one of the most significant words, really profound word that we come across in the teaching. So sangaha means relationship, sambandha. And we said that every object in the world has got this threefold sambandha. An object can be related to another object of the same species. Sajatiya sambandha. Like a pot being related to a pot, a human being related to another human. Or an object may be related to another object of a different species, like a pot being related to a cloth, or a human being related to a cup. Or an object may be related to its own parts, like the cloth being related to its threads. These are the only three kinds of sambandha, in the sense that there is no other sambandha outside of this. It's an airtight classification. Sajatiya sambandha, vijatiya sambandha, swagata sambandha. Sajatiya is relationship with another object of the same species. Vijatiya is a relationship with another object of a different species. Swagataha is a relationship with one's own parts. Now the question is, what about Atma? As we said, Atma cannot have Sajatiya Sambandha because there is no other Atma. There is only one Atma. Even though there appear to be different Atmas in the form of different Jivatmas, and there is a difference between Jivatma and Paramatma, those are all superficial differences. Really speaking, as we have seen, there is only one Atma. And therefore, Atma cannot have any Sajatiya Sambandha. Being one, when there's only one member in the species, what Sambandha can we talk about with another member of the same species? Not possible. Then is Vijatiya Sambandha possible? Say that can Atma have a Sambandha with another object of a different species? So what's a different species as compared to Atma? It is Anatma. But we have said Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyati. Therefore, if we talk about any other species other than Atma, that species has to be Mithya, Anatma. And as we have said, there can never be any sambandha between Satyam and Mithya. A person can never get married to the girl he saw in his dream. There cannot be a relationship. Therefore, there cannot be a relationship between Atma and any other species, because everything else is mithya. Therefore, Vijatiya Sambandha is also out of the door. Then is Swagata Sambandha possible? We say Atma is partless, Niravayavaha, partless. Atma doesn't have any parts at all. So Swagata Sambandha is also not possible. This means that Atma is not related to any blessed thing in this entire creation. So this is the profound nature of Atma. Not related to anything at all as Atma. As a human being, I can certainly talk about relationships with other human beings, with my pet, with a cow, etc. Or with my own parts like the kidney, liver, etc. That is at the Vyavaharika level. But when we take Atma itself, it is not related to anything at all. And what is my real nature? Is I am such an Atma. I am Asangaha Atma. Asanga Atma. Kintu Asangoham Satchidananda Swarupaha Aham Asmi. I am Satyam. I belong to a higher order of reality. I am Chit Swarupaha. I am of the nature of consciousness. I, the consciousness, am not a part, product, or property of the body. I, the consciousness, am an independent principle that pervades the body-mind and enlivens the body-mind. I, the consciousness, am not limited by the boundaries of the body-mind. I, the consciousness, survive the death of the body and the going away of the mind also. Has no effect on me, I, the consciousness. And I, the surviving consciousness, cannot be transacted with, not because I am not there, but because there is no medium in the absence of the body and the mind for me to become transactive. These are the 5 features of consciousness that we saw. Chit Swarupa. And I as Atma, as Brahman, as Satyam Brahma, I am limitless, full and complete. Ananta. And being limitless, full and complete, I am of the nature of Ananda. This nature, my limitless fullness, completeness, is what manifests in a conducive state of mind as this experienced happiness. I am the only source of happiness. There is no happiness in objects of the world. There is no inherent happiness in the body or the mind. In a conducive state of mind, my fullness, limitless and completeness is what manifests as this experiential happiness. So I am Satchidananda Swarupaha, Chidakasha Rupaha. I am comparable to space. This consciousness that I am is comparable to space. Because there are several common attributes. Space is formless, consciousness is also formless. Space is divisionless, cannot really be divided. Consciousness is also divisionless, blemishless. If something happens in space, like if there's some foul smelling object, it really cannot affect space. Similarly, anything that appears in consciousness cannot really affect consciousness. All pervading, space is all pervading, consciousness is also all pervading. And asangaha, space is asangaha, not really connected to anything that appears in space. Similarly, consciousness, Atma, is also asangaha, not really connected to anything at all, because everything else is mithya. And prakasha rupaha, as we said, even the luminaries of the world cannot present themselves to me unless they are pervaded by the light of consciousness. My eyes have to contact the luminary for the luminary to become visible. If there are no eyes contacting the luminary, no matter how much the luminary shines, it cannot be known. Therefore, for the luminary like the sun, the moon, the stars, the fire, the lightning, for any of these luminaries to be known, my eyes have to contact the luminary. Because my eyes are endowed with the light of consciousness. The luminary has to be pervaded by the light of consciousness for it to be known. But then, do my eyes possess the light of consciousness? We say no. The eyes have to be backed by a conscious mind for the luminary to be known. But then, does the mind itself possess the light of consciousness? Again, we say no. The mind has to be backed by Atma. Only when the RM is pervaded by the OC, then the reflected consciousness is formed in the reflecting media. Therefore, I am the original consciousness. I shine with consciousness. I shine as consciousness. And because of my shining as consciousness, the mind shines with consciousness. Because the mind shines with consciousness, the eyes shine with consciousness. Because the eyes shine with consciousness, the luminary also become known. Therefore, I am prakasha rupaha, of the nature of the light of consciousness. Such an aparoksha jnanavan jivanmuktaः. These are some specifics of the jnanam that Tattvabodha is giving. And we saw the benefits of this jnanam at the vyavaharika level. Since we are in the last topic of Tattvabodha that discusses this jnana phalam of jivanmukti, we talked about the vyavaharika benefits of this jnanam. The first thing we said is jigyasa nivrittihi. There's always a lot of these questions like who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What is the nature of Ishvara? Is there an Ishvara? If there is an Ishvara, what does that Ishvara look like? Where is Ishvara? What is the nature of the world? Where did the world come from? Is it real or is it not? All of these questions are once and for all brushed aside in the Jivanmukta Jnani's mind. These are no more questions because Dridha Nishchaya Rupa Aparoksha Jnanavan Jivanmuktaഃ. He has a firm conviction, firm knowledge regarding these answers to these questions. So Jigyasa Nivrittihi. All of these questions no longer bother this Jivanmukta. The second is Vidyananda Praptihi. He knows I am full, limitless, complete. And this knowledge itself gives a certain joy. When this Jivanmukta Jnani does Nididhyasanam, contemplation on this knowledge, then that brings about a certain joy, a certain peace in the mind. There is no insecurity, there is no fear, there is no worry, etc. in this Jivanmukta's mind. And therefore, the mind is generally peaceful, generally calm. Of course, the mind has its vasanas and the mind may have its reactions now and then. But even then, the Jnani is very clear that I am not the mind, I am not affected by the limitations of the mind also. Vidyananda Praptihi. The third is Karpanya Dainya Nivrittihi. This Jivanmukta is no longer hankering after the pleasures of the world because he knows I am Purna. We took the example of this person who has a well in his house. So he is no longer critically dependent on the corporation water supply. If the corporation water supply is there, well and good. That's a bonus. But even if it is not there, he has his well to fall back on. So similarly, if there are some pleasures of the world that come into his life because of Prarabdha, and that's a bonus. But if these pleasures of the world are not there, even then he loses nothing because he knows I am Purna. Karpanya Dainya Nivrittihi, Aghata Nivrittihi. We said that this Jnanam is like a great shock absorber. We talk about these vehicles that have these shock absorbers. When they go over bumps, the shocks are not felt. Sometimes what happens is the cycles and two-wheelers, etc., that don't have very good shock absorbers, sometimes when they go over the bump, the shock is so severe that this person, and especially there are potholes on roads, this person is thrown off the bike, gets injured in the process. But if one has a great shock absorber, then one can go over the bump without getting affected. So an Ajnani is a person who in the presence of these shocks, which are like these potholes, gets thrown off, injured in the process, mentally scarred, emotionally devastated. But this Jnani goes over these pothole-like shocks because there is a Jnanam-like shock absorber. It's like a powerful shield. Initially, the mind may react saying, "What?" But very soon, because of this jnanam that I am Purnaha, this jnani bounces back. There's enormous resilience to shock-like situations. An ajnani is thrown by the wayside, begins to lament, gets injured in the process, but this jnani keeps going. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. So, aghata nivrittihi. The last one is dakshata praptihi, because these cross currents of insecurity, fear, worry, anxiety, these kinds of cross currents are generally contained because of this jnanam. The jnani becomes very efficient in day-to-day activities. When these cross currents of worry, anxiety, fear, insecurity, etc., they are in an Ajnani's mind, then the mind gets taken for a ride. He's not able to focus on what needs to be done. But because all of these kinds of negative aspects of the mind are kept in check by the Jnana, the Jnani can keep going, do what is required to be done. And this is why we say that Jnanam is not something for a person to learn once this person is retired. Vedanta is not something to be done after retirement, because there are some people who jokingly say, Vedant, Vedant. Vedant means without teeth. So Vedanta is not something to be done when you're Vedant. It is something to be done, to be looked into even when one is young. Because this Jnanam has got so many Vyavaharika advantages. And that is why Krishna gave Arjuna this teaching in the middle of a battlefield also, because Arjuna was carried away by his mind, by all of these emotions in the mind. That is why Krishna thought that is about time you know about this. In order to fight this battle, you need this knowledge. So in order to fight this battle of life, we all need this knowledge. So dakshata praptihi. So we talked about the vyavaharika benefits, but the primary benefit is moksha. I know that I am full, limitless, complete, unconditionally. My purnatvam is unconditional. So this is what we call moksha. So the Jnani knows that I don't even need to gain moksha, because moksha happens to be my very nature. As Atma, as Brahman, I was never really bound in order to become liberated. I don't even need to be liberated to become liberated, for I have always been liberated and I will always be liberated. So this Jnani, as we said, this is like this cricket team that has won 3 matches out of the 5-match series. So, with what attitude are they going to play the other 2 matches? They still play, but they know that we have already won. So, whatever happens doesn't matter. Similarly, the Jnani has won this series of life, and therefore the Jnani can put on this body mind costume and go and act in the world. But whatever happens doesn't matter, because he is unconditionally Purna. So all his actions are out of this total fulfillment rather than hankering for fulfillment in the world. So these Jnani's actions in the world become a blessing for everybody else. These are the benefits of this Jnanam. Jnana Phalam topic we are discussing in Tattva Bodha. So then Tattva Bodha moves on and it talks about yet another benefit. And we will read that portion first. So this is in the PDF that I had sent, and the last 2 pages in the PDF. So at the beginning of it, it is there. Brahmaivahamasmityaparokshajnanena
ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मीति अपरोक्षज्ञानेन
निखिलकर्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्तः स्यात्.
निखिलकर्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्तः स्यात्.
So aparokshajnanena, again Tattvabodha comes back to the jnanam with this jnanam, due to this aparoksha jnanam. And what aparoksha jnanam? Brahmaivahamasmi iti aparoksha jnanena, that I am this Purnam Brahma. Such an aparoksha jnanam. What happens? Nikhila karma bandha vinirmukta syat. So the Jnani becomes totally freed. Nikhila karma bandha vinirmukta syat, becomes totally freed of the bondage of karma. So here we'll go back and recall some of our past discussion with regards to karma. So we took the example of planting a lemon seed. And we said that if we plant a lemon seed, then lemon seed may become a sprout. A sprout may come out of it within a week, or it may be within a few months, or it may take even a few decades perhaps for the sprout to come out. It all depends on the right conditions to be there. When the right conditions are there, this lemon seed will sprout. But when it sprouts, what comes out is only a lemon plant and a lemon tree. It's never a coconut plant or a mango tree. So now, what we said is that when we take the Jiva, then Jiva engages in thoughts, words, and deeds. All of these are different types of actions. There's mental action in the form of thoughts, verbal action in the form of words, and physical action in the form of deeds. So each of these types of actions have their repercussions. And some of it we can see, that is called drishta phalam, that can be seen. But then there's also an unseen result that is produced with every thought, word, and deed. And that is what we call this punya or pāpa karma. So with every thought, word, and deed, the jiva is planting a seed of punya or a seed of pāpa. And the seed of punya and pāpa, seed of punya or the seed of pāpa, has to sprout sometime in the future when the conditions are right. But we can't say when it will sprout, but it will definitely sprout. And this is what determines the various kinds of experiences in the life of the jiva. The past, punya, pāpa, when they begin to sprout, they begin to determine the experiences for that jiva. The adrishta, pāpa, gets translated into drishta dukkham. The adrishta punyam gets translated into drishta sukham. Any past fructifying pāpa, when it begins to sprout, it comes in the form of an unconducive experience. And any past punya, when it begins to sprout, it comes in the form of a pleasant, conducive experience. Avashyam eva bhoktavyam kritam karma shubhashubham na bhuktam khriyate karma kalpakoti shatairapi. So avashyam anubhoktavyam, avashyam eva bhoktavyam. These results of this punya and pāpa have to be definitely experienced. Kritam karma shubhashubham. Na bhuktam khriyate karma. These seeds that are planted in the past, they will not go away without giving their result. Na bhuktam, na abhuktam khriyate karma kalpa koti shatairapi. Even in 100 crore days of Brahma, which amounts to 4,320,000,000 years, billions and billions of years, if there was this past karma waiting to sprout, it will not go away without sprouting. So this is the karma. But then what is this karma bandha? Because he says, Nikhila karma bandha vinirmuktasya. What is this karma bandha? This karma bandha is twofold. When living, these past punya and papa that I may feel I have nothing to do with, I have done it millions of lifetimes ago. It begins to sprout. And then what? Suddenly I find some unpleasant experience. or even a pleasant experience for that matter. Both are the result of this fructification of the past karma from millions of years ago that are still kept track of. So I have to go through that situation whether I like it or not. I cannot do anything about it. Of course, there are certain things I can try to do, like prayaschitta karmas, etc. So in some ways we can visualize these karmas as as things that are boomeranging towards me. So I throw something, and then it goes for a distance, and then it begins to boomerang towards me. So if I have done something wrong, that's like a missile I have shot at myself. That is now begun to travel towards me. The only way to counter it, I cannot stop it just like that. The only way to counter it is throw another missile at it to try and destroy it, like these anti-missiles that we talked about. So these prayaschitta karmas are like these anti-missiles that one can do to try to neutralize past papas. So this is the karma bandha, that I have to go through these experiences whether I like it or not when I'm living. Similarly, after death, helplessly, based on the fructification of the past karmas, one has to take rebirth. And what form of rebirth it is going to be, one cannot say. It may be the life of an octopus, or a caterpillar, or a fox, or even a devata. The next janma could be in Swargaloka also. One cannot say. But then one has no say in this matter also. It is all due to the momentum, due to the fructification of some past karmas. So this is the karma bandha. I'm as though going from one whirlpool to another. We took this example when we were discussing the law of karma. Vidyaranya Muni talks about this insect being stuck in a whirlpool in a river, in a rapid. So it's stuck in a whirlpool. And then it has no say in the matter. It just stays in the whirlpool for a while. And then once it exits the whirlpool, it may heave a sigh of relief for a few seconds, but then suddenly it finds itself in another whirlpool. This keeps going and keeps going. So this is what the life of the jiva is. This is the samsara chakra. One is in this whirlpool like life. The life is like a whirlpool, bringing a lot of experiences that I have no control over. And then as soon as this life ends, I land up in another whirlpool, another whirlpool. And there is no end to this. In the clutches of karma, the Ajnani is in the clutches of karma. It will keep happening. This is the karma bandha. When living, he is bound by karma. Even after death, he is bound by karma to take another life. So nikhila karma bandha vinirmukta syat. The jnani is free from both of these types of karma bandhas. So how is that? So let us take a jnani when jnani is living. What is the jnanam? What is this Jivanmukta free of? We said he is liberated. What is he liberated from? Really, he is liberated from ajnanam. He is liberated from ajnanam. And therefore, he is also liberated from all these products of ajnanam, like this adhyasa and samsara, etc. So the one who is not liberated from ajnanam, an ajnani, basically takes himself to be the body-mind. And therefore, he takes himself to be this doer, that I am the karta, I am the doer of actions. Why? He has to gain purnatvam. In order to gain purnatvam, he engages in actions in the world for the sake of purnatvam. He is clearly seeing that I am the doer of these actions. And Vedanta says that the doer can never escape being an enjoyer or a sufferer. Whatever results of actions that are accomplished by the doing, this person also enjoys or suffers the results of those actions. So he becomes a karta, he also becomes a bhokta. But then this jnani, due to this jnanam, he has eliminated the ajnanam. So he knows I am the original consciousness. I am not this body mind. And I am not, as this Atma, I am Akartā, Abhoktā. I am not a doer at all. I am not an enjoyer or a sufferer at all. I am just a presence that illumines whatever happens. And the light of consciousness, Prakasha Rupa, light like consciousness, space like consciousness, in which all these things happen, but which is not affected by whatever happens. The body and the mind are doing, I am not the doer. Akartā, Abhoktā. And similarly, this body and the mind go through these experiences. I don't go through these experiences. So without neutralizing all of these karmas one by one, like we said, the Ajnani is going to try to neutralize these karmas by throwing these anti-missiles in the form of this prayaschitta karmas. But Jnani is not doing any prayaschitta karmas in order to neutralize these karmas. He has neutralized them just with jnana. Nikhila karma bandha vinirmuktasya. Like awakening from a dream. When whatever happens in the dream gets falsified. So this doership and the enjoyership don't really belong to the Atma. They were superimposed upon the Atma because of ignorance. And whatever the karma is, whatever the result of the karma is, can only affect the doer who is an enjoyer or a sufferer. It cannot touch the Atma. We give the example of Sugriva here. There is a certain story in the Ramayana that Sugriva, it starts with Vali. So Vali fought some monster for Rakshasa in the form of a bull or a buffalo. I forget exactly the exact details, but he killed that Rakshasa. And then he threw that the remains, the body, a very long distance. And that apparently crashed into a rishi's hermitage, Matanga Rishi. And he cursed him that Vali would never be able to enter this mountain called the Rishyamukha mountain. So Vali had this curse. Now, later on, of course, a lot of things happened, and then Vali was always chasing Sugriva. What Sugriva would do is that anytime Vali begins to chase him, he would run and come and sit in this mountain, Rishyamukha mountain. And Vali could not enter that mountain. So he was safe there. Vali could not assail him there at all. So Swamiji gives this example. He says this Jnani is sitting in this Rishyamukha mountain. And this karma like Vali cannot attack him there. Why? Because as Atma, Jnani is now identified himself as I am this Atma Brahman. So as long as he is abiding as his Atma and Brahman, Atma, that is Brahman, karma cannot touch him, it cannot enter. The karma has a curse like Vali that it cannot affect this Atma, Brahman. Why? Because Atma is asangaha, as we have seen, not connected to anything. So nikhila karma bandha vinirmuktasya. And after death, what happens? After the fall of this body of the Jnani, what happens? If it was an Ajnani, then the Sukshma and Karana Shariras survive. And then there is travel. The laws of karma take this surviving Jivatma, the Sukshma Karana Sharira. That surviving Jivatma travels and takes another embodiment. But at the time of fall of the body of the Jivanmukta Jnani, there is no further karma remaining for him to travel and take another embodiment. So there is no punarjanma. And we'll talk more about this today. So while living, he enjoys Jivanmukti. He is not affected by these experienced the karmas that are fructifying. He is not affected by that. Why? Because he is in the Rishyamukha Parvata like Atma. And then even after death, there is no travel for this jnani. So it's like Ganga merging into the ocean. As Ganga, the river was an individual, but once Ganga merges into the ocean, then the individuality is gone. But then Ganga still survives as the ocean, one with the ocean. Similarly, this individuality of the Jnani is gone, but he still survives as Ishvaraha, as Brahman. The Jnani still survives as the total. So this is the Videhamukti after death. So now we talked about the karmas of the Jnani, Nikhila karma bandha vinirmukta syat. So there is naturally a question, well, what are these different types of karmas? And how does the Jnani become free of them? So we will read this section of the Tattvabodha now that talks about this aspect. Karmani kati vidhani santi iti chet.
कर्माणि कति विधानि सन्ति इति चेत्
Agami Sancita Prarabdha Bhedena Trividhani Santi.
आगामि सञ्चित प्रारब्ध भेदेन त्रिविधानि सन्ति
Jnanotpatyanantaram
ज्ञानोत्पत्त्यनन्तरं
Jnani Deha Kritam Punya Pāpa Rūpam Karma
ज्ञानिदेहकृतं पुण्यपापरूपं कर्म
Yadasti Tad Agamitya
यदस्ति तत् आगामि अभिधीयते
Sanchitam Karma Kim
सञ्चितं कर्म किम्
Anantakoti Janmanam Bija Bhutam Sat
अनन्तकोटिजन्मनां बीजभूतं सत्
Yat Karma Jatam Purvarjitam Tishtati
यत् कर्म जातं पूर्वाजितं तिष्ठति
Tat Sanchitam Gneyam
तत् तत् सञ्चितं ज्ञेयम्
Prarabdham Karma Kimiti Chet
प्रारब्धं कर्म किम् इति चेत्
Idam Shariram Utpadya
इदं शरीरम् उत्पाद्य
Iha Loke Evam Sukha Dukkhadipradam Yat Karma
इह लोक एवं सुखदुःखादिप्रदं यत् कर्म
Tat Prarabdham Bhogena Nashtam Bhavati
तत् प्रारब्धं भोगेन नष्टं भवति
Prarabdha Karmanam Bhogadeva Kshaya Iti.
प्रारब्धकर्मणां भोगात् एव क्षय इति
So we ask, Karmani Kati Vidhani Santi. What are these karmas that the Jnani is freed from? And how is he freed from them is also implicit in this question. So Karmani Kati Vidhani Santi iti chet, if you ask what are these karmas, then Agami Sanchita Prarabdha Bhedena Trividhani Santi. So there are three types of karmas: Agami, Sanchita, and Prarabdha karma. So he talks about Agami karma first here in terms of Jnanotpatyanantaram. We will take that sentence up as the third sentence. We will first discuss Sanchitam and Prarabdha. Sanchitam karma kim? So he asks, Sancita karma, what is it? You said there are three types of karma, Sancita, Prarabdha and Agami. What is Sancita karma? So he says, Ananta koti janmanam bija bhutam sat yat karma jatam purvarjitam tishtati tat sanchitam geyam. So the word sanchitam means collected or accumulated. So yat karma jatam purvarjitam. So this entire bundle of punya and papa karmas acquired in all of the prior janmas. That is called sanchitam. So like we said, in every janma, this jiva is planting seeds constantly. Seeds of punya and papa with every thought, word and deed. So many of these seeds just lie dormant because the right conditions for them to fructify are not yet there. They don't go away. Avashyam anubhoktavyam kritam karma shubha shubham na kshiyate. So it doesn't go away by itself. Na kshiyate. So all of these accumulated karmas are there. This is called Sanchita karma. So this is a bit like putting money in a fixed deposit. So if you put money in a fixed deposit in a bank, then that money is not available for me to be exhausted. Why? Because it's tied up in a fixed deposit currently. It cannot be spent. So all of these sanchita karmas are like karmas in are like money put in a fixed deposit. They are not yet available for spending. Why? Because the right condition has not yet arisen. And what type of sanchita karma is this? Ananta koti janmanam bija bhutam. So he uses the example of the seed. Bija bhutam, it's like a seed. A seed for what? These are like seeds for ananta koti janmanam, for future janmas. How many janmas? Ananta koti, infinite crores of janmas. So there is enough sanchita karma to fuel infinite crores of janmas. You can just say infinite janmas. But how did we collect so much sanchita? Because the jiva is beginningless. The jiva has also been around since beginningless time. So the jiva has also had infinite past janmas. In this infinite past janmas, this jiva has accumulated infinite sanchita karma that can fuel infinite future janmas. This is the sanchita karma, ananta koti janmana, bija bhutam, yat purvarjitam tishtati. It was obtained in these prior janmas, infinite prior janmas. And what is prarabdha? Prarabdham karma kim iti chet. If we ask what is prarabdha, then he says, idam shariram utpadya iha loke eva sukha dukkhadi pradam yat karma tat prarabdham. So he says that there is a subset of the sanchita karmas that is now ready to sprout. Why? Because the conditions are right for this type of karma. It is ready to sprout. So this subset of the sanchita that is ready to sprout is what we call prarabdha. So this is like the fixed deposit that has begun to mature now. So as the fixed deposit matures, the funds come into the savings account, ready to be spent. So this fructifying, germinating seed like sanchita karmas are called prarabdha karma. And what do these accomplish? Says, idam shariram utpadya iha loke evam sukha dukkhadi pradam yat karma tat prarabdham. So idam shariram utpadya, they determine this type of body, the family, the circumstances in this life. That is determined by this prarabdha. And ihaloke evam sukha dukkhadi pradam, and the types of experiences that one is going to get in this life, pleasant experiences and unpleasant experiences, those are also determined by prarabdha. The type of childhood, the type of parentage one has, the type of body one has, male or female, whether it's tall or short, what kind of diseases this body may be prone to. For example, as one grows, one may have knee joint problems, arthritis, or blood pressure, diabetes. Some of these things, they are all genetic. So we say that even these genes, the type of genes one has, that is determined by prarabdha. So some are healthy even at an old age, but some are at a young age begin to develop problems. So a lot of these are related to prarabdha. And this body dies when prarabdha is exhausted. When this prarabdha is exhausted, there is nothing to keep the body going. The karma is gone. The body also falls when the prarabdha is exhausted. So this is the prarabdha karma. Then what is the agami karma, the third type? It says jnanotpatyanantaram jnani deha kritam punya papa rupam karma yadasti tad agami tyabhidhiyate. So here he gives a specific definition of agami from the point of view of a jnani. So we will take this definition up next, but first let us discuss what is agami from the point of view of an ajnani. So from an ajnani's point of view, agami karma is that karma that this jiva begins to accumulate right after birth. So after birth, when this jiva performs new actions, thoughts, words, or deeds, is planting new seeds of punya and papa. He is exhausting the prarabdha, the seeds of prarabdha that have begun to germinate, those are exhausted from the Sancita. But then these new seeds are getting added. These new seeds are called Agami. That will have their effect sometime in the future, either in the same life or in a future life. So these are like new earnings that this human is doing. There are new earnings, and these new earnings may be spent immediately or they may be put into a fixed deposit. So at any time, the Sanchita karmas are infinite because a small part of it is exhausted as prarabdha. But then in this life, new seeds are created, new seeds are planted by this jiva. That is replenishing the exhausting prarabdha. So some of these seeds that are planted by the jiva are exhausted in the same life, they fructify and give their result in the same life. But some of these seeds that are not exhausted, they join the Sanchita. So at the time of death, if some of this Agami karma still remains, then it joins the Sanchita. So this is what happens for the Ajnani. Now for a Jnani, he gives a different definition of Agami here. He says, Jnanotpatyanantaram jnani deha kritam punya papa rupam karma yadasti tad agami iti abhidhiyate. So he says that the karmas done by a jnani prior to the rise of the jnanam, they are normally called agami for the ajnani, but they just join the sanchita. So whatever agami karmas were created prior to jnanam, they are no longer called agami, they become sanchita for the jnani. But then after jnanam, if the jnani's body engages in some actions, so jnanotpatti anantaram jnani deha kritam, this jnani's body performs some actions. Punya papa rupam karma yadasti tad agami ityabhidhiyate. So the results of the actions that are done by this body of the jnani, note he doesn't say done by the jnani. We said the jnani knows I am Akartā. I don't do anything as Atma. And that's why he says jnani deha kritam. then whatever punya papa arises as a result of the actions of the jnani, those are called agami here. So then the question is, what happens to these jnanis' karmas? That's the natural question. And there he says, Tat prarabdham bhogena nashtam bhavati prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti. So he's talking about what happens to the prarabdha karma. But then we will read the next para also, because that talks about what happens to Sancita and Agami. And then we together deal with this topic of what happens to the Jnani's karmas, the threefold karma. So we will read the next section also. Sanchitam karma
Sanchitam karma
ब्रह्मैवाहमिति निश्चयात्मकज्ञानेन नश्यति निश्चय
brahmaivaam iti निश्चयात्मक ज्ञानेन नश्यति
आगामि कर्म अपि
आगामि कर्म अपि
ज्ञानेन नश्यति
ज्ञानेन नश्यति
किञ्च आगामि कर्मणाम्
किञ्च आगामि कर्मणां
नलिनी दलगतजलवत्
नलिनी दलगतजलवत्
ज्ञानिनां सम्बन्धो नास्ति
ज्ञानिनां सम्बन्धो नास्ति
किञ्च ये ज्ञानिनं स्तुवन्ति भजन्ति अर्चयन्ति
किञ्च ये ज्ञानिनं स्तुवन्ति भजन्ति अर्चयन्ति
तान् प्रति ज्ञानीकृतम् आगामि पुण्यं गच्छति
तान् प्रति ज्ञानी कृतम् आगामि पुण्यं गच्छति
ये ज्ञानिनं निन्दन्ति द्विषन्ति दुःखप्रदानं कुर्वन्ति
ये ज्ञानिनं निन्दन्ति द्विषन्ति दुःखप्रदानं कुर्वन्ति
तान् प्रति ज्ञानीकृतं सर्वम् आगामि क्रियमाणं यदवाच्यं कर्म
तान् प्रति ज्ञानी कृतं सर्व आगामि क्रियमाणं यद् वाच्यं कर्म
यद् अवाच्यं कर्म
यद् अवाच्यं कर्म
पापात्मकं तत् गच्छति
पापात्मकं तत् गच्छति.
So here he is talking about what happens to the threefold karma of a jnani. tat prarabdham bhogena nashtam bhavati prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti. So prarabdham bhogena nashtam bhavati. This prarabdha karma, when it's experienced, when its results are experienced, it is exhausted. Bhogena nashtam bhavati prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti. Prarabdha karma can be destroyed only by experiencing that karma, the results of that karma. So it doesn't matter whether one is a jnani or an ajnani, the results of prarabdha have to be experienced. The results of the seeds that have started to germinate, they have to be experienced, whether one is a jnani or an ajnani. So the jnani's body and mind are also influenced by prarabdha. For example, one may have a short life or a long life. One may have a healthy body or a sick body, even as a jnani. So the genes are not going to get altered just because this person gained jnana. Whatever the genetics has to do, it has to do. And the genetics, as we said, is determined by prarabdha. So prarabdha is exhausted only by experiencing it. Prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti. So as long as the prarabdha is there, the jnani's body is also alive. The prarabdha brought this body into existence, and the prarabdha alone sustains this body. So the body survives as long as the prarabdha is there to fuel the body. And in that interval, the jnani's body and mind also go through whatever prarabdha has in store. So one may ask, what is the advantage of Jnanam then? If I have to go through all of these experiences that karma brings, then what is the advantage of Jnanam? Why did we sit for these 54 classes? See? You are at the end of the class, in the last class now, you're telling me that the Jnani's body and mind have to go through whatever it has to go through. If I had known this earlier, perhaps I would have thought about whether I need to attend the next class or not. What we say is that even though the Jnani's body and mind go through all these ups and downs that are avashyam anubhoktavyam, have to be experienced because of Prarabdha, the Jnani is not affected by it. The physical or the biological experience is the same. The pain is also the same. But this Jnani's response is totally different. So the Jnanam changes the perspective, it changes the conclusion that are born from these experiences. So the Ajnani who goes through these experiences, the Ajnani would say, I am suffering. The Ajnani would perhaps indulge in some kind of self-pity. He would say, why me? Why do I have to go through all this? So there is physical pain, but there is a greater psychological pain associated with the physical pain. Whereas a Jnani knows that I never suffer. As Atma, I never suffer. So this Jnanam is like a raincoat. Swamiji gives the example that Jnanam is like a raincoat. So the Ajnani doesn't have this Jnanam raincoat. The Prarabdha's experiences are like the rain. Both the Jnani and the Ajnani cannot stop the rain. But this Ajnani gets drenched because he doesn't have the Jnanam raincoat. The Jnani has this Jnanam raincoat. So even though he is going out in the same rain, he never gets drenched. So he never says, I am suffering. He never asks, why me? He says, I am ever Purnaha. Purnatvam is my nature, irrespective of what kind of rain this karma brings about. So the same rain falls on the Jnani also, but he doesn't get drenched by it. Gurunapi dukkhena na vichalyate, says the Bhagavad Gita, this Jnani. Gurunapi dukkhena, even the greatest tragedy, so-called tragedy, na vichalyate, he is not really affected by it. Because of this Jnanam like raincoat. So there is the advantage of the Jnanam, that it doesn't let Prarabdha affect the Jnani who identifies with the Atma, with Purnam Brahma. That's the advantage of the Jnanam. But we say that we should not view this continuation of the Prarabdha as a negative. Because if this Jnanam, we say, why can't Jnanam be more powerful and destroy Prarabdha also? It would have been great if Jnanam was more powerful and it had destroyed Prarabdha also. Then even the experience would not have been there. But we say that would be a huge, huge disadvantage if Jnanam destroyed Prarabdha. Why is it so? Because we have to think through this. See, if Jnanam destroyed Prarabdha, then as soon as the Jnanam arises, there is no Prarabdha left to fuel the body. So as soon as Jnanam arises, the body would fall. So now you decide whether you would come to the next class or not. Nobody would show up in the class because everybody would be worried. What if this Jnanam arises? Then I won't come back home alive. So there would be, the class would be empty. That's the first problem. The second problem is that if the body falls, as soon as Jnanam arises, there would be no Jnani Jivanmukta at all. So there would be no Jnani Jivanmukta who can teach. So the entire Guru Parampara, there would be no Jnani Jivanmukta. What does that mean? The entire Guru Parampara would become an Ajnani Parampara. And what would an Ajnani give? An Ajnani can only give Ajnana. So the entire Guru Parampara becomes an Ajnani Parampara. Then there is no possibility of Jnanam also arising. All of these problems would be there. So thankfully, Prarabdha doesn't get destroyed with the rise of Jnanam. So this is with regards to Prarabdha avashyam anubhoktavyam. It has to be experienced. Rain has to come. But this Jnani is unaffected because of the Jnanam raincoat. Then what happens to the Sancita karma? That is the next question. So Sanchitam karma Brahma evahamiti nischayatmaka jnanena nashti. He says again nischayatmaka jnanena. This jnanam topic keeps coming repeatedly. Because of this jnanam, because of this firm conviction that I am Brahman, this Sanchita karma gets destroyed, decimated. So one may wonder how just by this jnana, so the entire bundle of Sanchita karma that would have fueled infinite janmas in the future, how can it get destroyed? Aren't we saying something too much here? You say no. Here we give the dream example. So consider the dream where I'm using the word I to mean this dream body and the dream mind. So then, now consider that he commits some crime in the dream. This dream individual commits a crime in the dream. And then he was trying to avoid the police in the dream and all that. He gets caught in the dream. And then he's being dragged towards the jail. And then he gets thrown in the jail. And when he's thrown in the jail, his head hits a wall. And suddenly he awakens. So now what happens when he awakens? There is a rise of knowledge. And what is this knowledge? That this very I that I was taking to be associated with this dream body and the dream mind, that is now in the light of knowledge that I am the waker, it gets associated with the waker. So the I, the word I is the same, but the meaning of this I has changed completely. He was the dream individual struggling in the dream. Because of the crime he committed in dream, the moment he wakes up, he now knows I am this waker. I have nothing to do with that dream crime. And so now his attitude towards who I am and towards the world that he was experiencing completely changes. This is a fundamental, revolutionary change in how I view myself. And because of this revolutionary change in how I view myself, how I view the world also changes. The dream world I realize is false. Because of this change, he cannot be jailed for that crime. He knows that I have nothing to do with it. So only when this example is assimilated, we can understand how this knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi completely destroys this Sanchita karma. Because there is this pratibhasika I, vyavaharika I, and this paramarthika I. This pratibhasika I is this dream individual who struggles in the dream. When I wake up from this pratibhasika I to this vyavaharika I, the waker, then all of these karmas associated with the pratibhasika I, they are wiped out. Similarly, we say when one awakens from this vyavaharika I, that I am this vyavaharika body mind, from this, when there's a revolutionary change in the meaning of the I, when this I gets associated with this paramarthika I, which is the Atma Brahman, then this vyavaharika Sancita karmas get wiped out. So when one transitions from the prior state to the new state, from pratibhasika to vyavaharika, all that is pratibhasika gets wiped out. When one transitions from vyavaharika to paramarthika, then what is vyavaharika? That karma gets wiped out. So sanchitam karma brahmaivaham asmi iti nischayatmaka jnanena nashyati. Entire Sanchita karma that would have fueled an infinite number of future janmas, that is wiped out. Then what happens to the Agami karma? So as we said, Jnani is free from the influence of Prarabdha. How? Raincoat example. Even though Prarabdha rains, the Jnani is not affected by it. The Prarabdha has to rain. That's the only way it can exhaust itself. It produces these rain-like experiences, but the Jnani's raincoat shields him from the not from the experience of Prarabdha, but from all of this psychological pain that is associated with this experience of Prarabdha. Then what happens to this Sanchita? We say Sanchita is destroyed. How? Awakening example. Awakening from the dream example. Then what happens to Agami? He says, Agami karma api jnanena nashyati kincha agami karmanam nalini dalagata jalavat jnaninam sambandha nasti. He says, Agami is also destroyed. How? To understand this, we can take the example of the Constitution. The Constitution has a lot of laws. But then if there is an underage person that commits a crime, let us say, then the normal laws don't apply to this person. He has to be tried as a juvenile. Or if a mentally deranged person commits a crime, again, he won't be punished by the courts. Because the normal laws don't apply to such a person. Similarly, with regards to the law of karma also. If a brahmachari, for example, performs a grihasthas karma, that karma becomes null and void. He will not get the results of that karma. Similarly, if a person is sleeping and he kicks somebody in sleep, let us say, then he doesn't get the papa because this doer-ship is not there at that point. This kartritvam is not there. Similarly, we have discussed that in an animal life, if one hunts and kills a prey, then again no papa accrues because this free will and doer-ship, etc., is not there for that animal. So similarly, we say that this Jnani, Atma, he transcends this doer-ship. There's no ahamkara, there's no identification with the body mind. There's no doership, there's no enjoyership, no sufferership. Akartā, Abhoktā he is. So the law of karma doesn't apply to the Jnani in terms of the new karmas that the Jnani's body may engage. So Agami api jnanena nashyati. This Agami karma is really not even produced for that Jnani. Doesn't accrue to the Jnani because he doesn't have this ahankara, doesn't have this kartritvam, doesn't have this doership. But then suppose that this Agami karma did arise. This Jnani's body, for example, steps on some insect, or this Jnani's body eats something that was a product of some Papa's Pāpa karma, right? So this is a suppositional argument. Really speaking, this Agami doesn't accrue to the Jnani at all. But even if Agami arose, he says that it doesn't have any connection with the Jnani. Just like this lotus drop, this drop of water on a lotus leaf, it cannot stick to the leaf. It doesn't wet the leaf, it just slides off the leaf. So even if we imagine that the Jnani's deha is creating some punya or papa, then that karma doesn't stick to the Jnani. Because there is no doership, no kartritvam. It just falls off like this drop of water on a lotus leaf. So then what happens if this doesn't stick to the Jnani? What happens to this karma? You're saying this is again supposition. If the karma arises, then we say it doesn't stick to the Jnani, and what happens to it? He says, Kincha Jnaninam stuvanti bhajanti archayanti tan prati Jnani kritam agami punyam gacchati. So here the Shastra wants to give a certain message, saying that one has to be careful in relating to a Jnani. He says, don't do anything that may hurt the Jnani, but instead respect the Jnani. That's what the message the Shastra wants to give. So it gives this message in a kind of a roundabout manner. So he says, Kincha ye jnaninam stuvanti bhajanti archayanti. Those who praise the Jnani, stuvanti, bhajanti, serve the Jnani, archayanti, those who worship the Jnani. Tan prati jnani kritam agami punyam gacchati. So imagine this drop of water falling off the lotus leaf. Where does it land? It lands on them. So if there is this punya that suppositionally, if this punya arises due to this good works that the jnani's body does, then that punya goes to the people who worship the Jnani, serve the Jnani, help the Jnani in some way. Now, what happens, let's say, due to this suppositional papa that arises because of something that was done by the Jnani's deha? Then he says, Ye Jnaninam nindanti dvishanti dukkha pradanam kurvanti tan prati jnani kritam sarvam agami kriyamanam yadavachyam karma papatmakam tad gacchati. So if somebody verbally abuses the Jnani, hates the Jnani, or even hurts a Jnani, nindanti, tushanti, dukkha pradanam kurvanti, tan prati Jnani kritam papatmakam karma tad gacchati. So this droplet of water that falls off the lotus leaf, if that is a Pāpa karma, it lands on those who are criticizing, verbally abusing, or hurting the Jnani. Because this Jnani, because he doesn't have this deha bhimana, he doesn't retaliate like an Ajnani does. If an Ajnani retaliates, then the score is settled right then and there. But then this Jnani doesn't retaliate. So this suppositional Pāpa karma that originates because of something done by the body of the Jnani, that lands on those who are criticizing, abusing, hurting the Jnani. So the message here is not to be taken literally, but the Shastra is giving an indirect message that be careful in relating with a Jnani. If you help the Jnani, serve the Jnani in some way, then you get the punya of these good acts that the Jnani's deha is apparently doing. But if one happens to abuse or hurt a Jnani, then one gets the Pāpa karma. So now we come to the last part of Tattvabodha, which we'll read now. Tatha chatma vit samsaram tirtva.
तथा चात्मवित् संसारं तीर्त्वा
Brahmanandam ihaiva prapnoti.
Brahmanandam ihaiva prapnoti.
Tarati shokam atmavit iti shrutehe.
Tarati shokam atmavit iti shrutehe.
Tanum tyajatu vakashyam.
Tanum tyajatu vakashyam.
Shvapachasya grihetava.
Shvapachasya grihetava.
Jnana samprapti samaye.
Jnana samprapti samaye.
Muktosau vigatashayah.
Muktosau vigatashayah.
Iti smritescha.
Iti smritescha.
So he says, Atmavit samsaram tirtva brahmanandam ihaiva prapnoti. So this Jnani, Atmavit, samsaram tirtva, he crosses over samsara. Jnanam is destroyed, adhyasa is destroyed, there is no samsara. There was no struggle for this Jnani even when he was living. And he discovers that I am Brahman, full, limitless, complete of the nature of Anandaha. So he gains Moksha even when living. Brahmanandam ihaiva prapnoti. He gains Brahmananda, he gains Moksha. And tarati shokam atmavit iti shrutehe. So this Atmavit, this knower of Atma, this knower of Brahman transcends sorrow. He goes beyond sorrow. How does he go beyond sorrow? Because he knows that I, as Atma, am ever free of sorrow. Freedom from sorrow is really the freedom from the mistake that I am subject to sorrow. Tarati shokam atmavit. This the Shruti says, he says, iti shrutehe. He quotes the Chandogya Upanishad here. He crosses over sorrow even when living. So now he says, he is talking about the fall of the body of the Jnani. So when does the Jnani's body fall? When Prarabdha is exhausted. So Prarabdha is exhausted. Sancita, as we said, is destroyed by the Jnana, awakening from the dream example. Prarabdha, during the life, even as it was fructifying, the Jnani was not affected, the raincoat example. But then Prarabdha got exhausted. Sancita got destroyed because it's like awakening from the dream. And Agami has been avoided, like this lotus leaf droplet example. So there is zero karma when the body of the Jnani is falling. At that time, there is zero karma. So, really speaking, from the Jnani's perspective, there is no death at all. Because the Jnani as Atma, he says, I was never born. And as Atma, the Jnani is immortal. Therefore, he says, I never die. So we are talking about all this from the point of view of the people around the Jnani. So they see the Jnani's body falling. And the Jnani also, of course, sees his own body falling. He sees his body becoming sick and dying. But he says, I never die. There is no death for the Jnani. Because this is a dissociation of the Sukshma Sharira from the Sthula Sharira is what we call death. But this Jnani being Asangaha is not related to the Sthula Sharira, not related to the Sukshma Sharira. So there is no relationship between the Atma and this dissociation of the Sukshma Sharira from the Sthula Sharira. So he says that this death-like event I have no association with at all, being Asanga. So when the body falls, there is no karma balance left. And therefore, there is no punarjanma for this Jnani. The Sthula Sharira goes back into Sthula Prapancha. The Sukshma Sharira disintegrates into the Sukshma Prapancha. And the Karana Sharira disintegrates into the Karana Prapancha. What is left is just this original consciousness. The OC alone is left behind. There is no death for this Jnani. So now he talks about the fall of the body. Tanum tyajatu va kashyam swapachasya grihethava. So he says, let him drop his body in Kashi. Kashi is considered a very holy place, sacred place to drop the body, because the belief is that if one dies there, one goes to Swarga. So Jnani may drop his body there. Swapachasya grihethava. He may drop his body in the house of a Shwapacha, meaning a dog eater, meaning a very uncultured person, a very unholy place, so to say. It makes no difference for the Jnani. Why? Because there is no travel after death. There is no punarjanma. The karma balance is zero. So the time of death or the place of death has no bearing upon the Jnani. Why? Because jnana samprapti samaye muktaha asau vigatashayah. Even at the time of jnanam, as soon as he gained the jnanam, he gained moksha. Muktaha asau vigatashayah. Vigatashayah means from him all these abodes have departed. That is one meaning. Or from him all these karmas have departed. There is zero karma balance. So there is no punarjanma for this Jnani. There is no travel after death. He became liberated. Even with the rise of Jnanam, he gained moksha because he knew that moksha is my real nature. My nature is moksha. So whether he is alive or dead, he is a nitya muktaha, ever liberated, ever purnaha. So the last part is also a verse in Tattvabodha, in the form of a verse. Tanum tyajatu va kashyam swapajasya grihethava jnana samprapti samaye mukto sau vigatashayah. So the first was a verse in Tattvabodha. The last one is also a verse. And in between, we had a lot of prose. So this brings us to the end of this text called Tattvabodha. We will read the last line. Iti Tattvabodha prakaranam samaptam.
Iti Tattvabodha prakaranam samaptam.
So with this, the final topic of Jnana Phalam is also over. Tattvabodha prakaranam. This prakarana grantha called Tattvabodha. So subject matter is the subject matter of Vedanta. Tattvasya bodha, the jnanam of tattva, the jnanam of the reality, the jnanam of Atma, Atma jnanam, Brahma jnanam, Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikya jnanam. This is the subject matter of Tattvabodha. All the prakriyas, the methods to show the tattva. This is samaptam. Samaptam is a beautiful word, as Pujya Swamiji says. It doesn't mean end, over, finished. We don't talk about it that way, but we say completed, accomplished. So this text called Tattvabodha is completed. Whenever we complete a text, the tradition is that we chant the first verse again, in order to show that we are committed to our repeated revision, to the repeated study. We will come back to it, we will keep coming back to it. So we will complete this with chanting of the first Mangala Shloka. Vasudevendra Yogindram
Vasudevendra Yogindram
Natva Jnanapradam Gurum
Natva Jnanapradam Gurum
Mumukshunam Hitarthaya
Mumukshunam Hitarthaya
Tattvabodho Bhidhiyate.
Tattvabodho Bhidhiyate.
In the next class, we will see a summary of the Tattvabodha. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.